Today I thought we'd try something a little bit different on the channel. We've got a tier list of every UA card in the game currently of Yu-Gi-Oh! We're going to rank them from title winners in tier 1, European qualification in tier 2, mid-table tier 3, having a bad season tier 4, and relegation tier 5. Going with the sporting theme and a bit more football orientated is what I'm comfortable with, and also because the archetype's literally a sports archetype, so we're going to crack off into that. So we're going to start off with defense zone is what we're going to start off. And you're thinking, oh, you might never heard of a card. I'll pop it up on the screen, but it literally is for each monster a player controls of their main monster zone. Their spells and traps in the same column as that monster cannot be destroyed by their opponent's card effects, and their opponent cannot target them with card effects. It's not a UA card, I know what you're thinking, but it's not. It's got the artwork with Midfielder and Playmaker. It's literally got the UA art on it, and so yeah, it slots firmly into relegation. I have never seen the card played. It almost sounds like Infinite Impermanence, but dreadful. Is literally what I can put it up to. But yeah, it's slotted firmly into that relegation zone. And next card, again similar to defense zone, we have Lost Time. Again, I'll pop it up on the screen. But this card reads: if your opponent's life points is 4,000 or higher, your life points become 1,000 less than theirs. You can only activate one Lost Time per turn. Again, a dreadful card, just dreadful. Maybe some sort of burn deck could play this, but I honestly don't see the use. It's there because of the artwork, and it's going to slot firmly into tier 5 there. Now we're actually getting on to the good cards, or the actual UA cards, should I say. We're going to go for Blockbacker. This card is one of my favourite cards in the archetype. So you can special this card from your item by returning one UA monster. Same on every card, so I'll skip that part. Once per turn, when your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, you can change their battle positions, and if you do, negate their effects. This card is one of the main cards that you want out on the board at turn 1. So this card is going to slot firmly into tier 1 or tier 2. This is the card that I want on the board all the time. It's going to go tier 1. If this Blockbacker is going tier 1, it might change when I get to the next couple. So now we've got Dreadnought. So it's same effect as the first one, but returning blah. Then its actual effect: once per turn, if this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you target one card on the field and destroy it. This card is tier 1, so now Blockbacker is going to have to go tier 2. Dunk has to be tier 1 because this is the OTK enabler. This has a popping mechanic on it, but also it's the beater of the deck, 2,500, and then with UA Stadium goes up to 3k. You give it Power Jersey, and that's your OTK because of the double piercing damage from Power Jersey, and this inflicts piercing damage. So if you've got a defense position, you're going to win the duel. This has to go tier 1. Next up, we have Goalkeeper. Goalkeepers, I think, maybe seeing more play in the later on post Dawn of Majesty because it's level 6, and Skylark Dragon is also rank 6, so you can get plays like that. But currently it has the same effect, obviously. I do not want that. You can once per turn during your opponent's turn, you can target one UA monster you control. Once during the turn, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect. This is a quick effect, so this is a protection for the deck, but it's not great. It really isn't great. But I'd struggle to put it in tier 1 or 2 for sure. It's now choosing between 3 and 4. I mean, it's for protection, but only once per turn, so it's literally, and it only protects one card. It's got to go tier 4. It's just not great. But obviously it might become more useful when with rank 6 XYZ players. But yeah, it's sitting there for now. Next we have Hyper Stadium. Obviously this is one of the newer cards from Phantom Rage. Always treated as an FA card as well. So this is, you can add one UA monster or FA monster from your deck to your hand, or add one UA Stadium from your graveyard to your hand. You can create one field spell in your hand and pay 1000 life points. You can normal summon one UA or FA monster during your main phase this turn, in addition to your other normal summon / set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can only activate one UA Hyper Stadium per turn. This is 100% tier 1. This makes the deck so much better. This card combined with normal Stadium makes it so much better. This the consistency this card has added to the deck is incredible. So it has to go to tier 1. That's an easy one, that. So next we've got Libero Spiker. Obviously same effect as always. This is during your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can shuffle one level 5 or higher UA monster from your hand into the deck, and if you do, special summon one UA monster from your deck with a different name, then return this card to the hand. You can use this effect of UA Libero Spiker once per turn. Again, this card's going to be tier 1 or tier 2. This is the normal summon of the deck now. It used to be Midfielder, but this is now a normal summon. And the fact that it summons from a deck, which is one of the strongest mechanics in the game, and you can activate the effects of Player Manager from hand when shuffling it back, when getting something else out onto the board. So even if you got Rebounder out onto the board, you could get Manager out on the board with its effects on summon. But then also you can activate the effect of Rebounder to get Libero back onto the board, so you're still ending up with 3 monsters on the board. So this is going to go tier 1. Best normal summon in the deck by far. Then we've got UA Locker Room. This is a card that doesn't always, it's not seeing the most amount of play. It's alright. It's always treated as an FA card as well. Target one UA or FA monster you control in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and if you do, gain 500 life points, then you can apply this effect. Reveal any number of UA or FA monsters in your hand, shuffle them into the deck, then draw cards equal to the number of shuffle cards. You can only activate one UA Locker Room per turn. So this is obviously just like a card that just swaps out your hand, basically. It's almost like a magical mallet for the deck. It's okay, it has its uses. Obviously you're always going to shuffle one back into the deck because you're getting one from a graveyard. It's niche. It's going to have to go tier 4, or potentially even tier 5. Tier 4 because it's actually somewhat useful compared to the other cards in tier 5. But yeah, it's not the greatest, but it's also not the worst. So up next we've got a Man of Match. This is a trap card. It's one of the new ones as well. This is after damage calculation. If you're a UA or FA monster, destroyed an opponent's monster by battle, or when you're a UA or FA monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, special summon any number of UA or FA monsters with different names from your hand or graveyard in defense position. You can only activate one UA Man of Match per turn. This card, on paper, sounds incredible, because it really does sound so good. The problem is having UA monsters in the graveyard or in the hand, because usually you're going to get most of them out on the field, and if you've got Perfect Ace on the field and one in hand, you don't really want to activate Man of the Match because it's special summon and you're getting rid of the Ace negate. This is also niche as well. Is it better than Locker Room? It probably is. Because getting more cards onto the field and their effects aren't negated. So if you got Blockbacker back onto the field, you got Ace back onto the field, you got Manager back onto the field, you get the pop effect off Manager. So it has big effect usage. And if you can resolve it, it's really good. It puts you in such a good position. But resolving it seems more difficult than it's probably worth. So it's going to be a mid-table. It's a good card, don't get me wrong, but is it tier 2 or tier 1? No. Do I play it in the deck? over anything else? No. Would it go over? Would I play it over Locker Room? I probably would play it over Locker Room, but if I was playing a more control-orientated UA deck that relied more on trap cards, because the only trap cards that I really play in UA are going to be Penalty Box. So this is going to be an awkward one to fit into the deck. Next up, we have the former best normal summon of the deck, the only other normal summon and level 4 monster of the deck. We go into Midfielder. So this is during either player's turn, you can target one other UA monster you control, return that target that face-up monster to hand, then special summon one UA monster from your hand with a different name from that monster. So this is returning a card. So if you've got Ace out, Ace has used its effects already to negate, you can return it to the hand and swap it out for something else. So it's pretty much the effect of every UA monster, but in an actual effect that targets another card. It's really good. The baseline attack and defense of this card are very low, so you always want it to be boosted. But obviously you're not really having the card out for that long, because you're probably going to swap it out for something else. But it's just the normal summon. It's going to be it's either currently in the decks I play, I think it's a staple 2 of, because you need the consistency of Libero and this card, and the effect's really good. Obviously, if you've got cards in hand like Manager and some maybe even Slugger, you summon Slugger out by taking something else back from the field, and then you can activate the effect from Manager. Midfielder's going to be tier 2. It's a good card, really good card. Obviously the second normal summon, but I wouldn't put it in tier 1 because I don't think it's better than Libero. And for me, it's a competition between those two as to what you would go for your normal summon. And so now we'll move on to Mighty Slugger. Sluggers have the same effect, obviously, and then once per turn, if this card attacks, your opponent can activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. The card sounds really, really good, and it's got a good baseline attack. But I just don't see it coming up too often. Like the idea of this happening all the time, obviously not activating cards or effects in the damage step, but it's nicher than the other cards that I would have out. If I had to choose between this card and Dreadnought, who am I choosing in the battle phase? It's Dreadnought because of the pop effect and the piercing damage. This card's alright if you think your opponent's playing like a really heavy control deck and you're worried about the damage step. Just get this card out, boost its attack by 500 with Stadium, and then attack this with this card, so you don't get magic cylindered. But yeah, this card's going to be tier 3. It's okay. It's a good card, but it's not the best. It used to be one of the better ones, obviously, but we don't see much like trap card usage in damage step anymore, except in actual UA, because Penalty Box is up next. Now this card's going to be interesting because it's not used for its actual effects. It's like battle stage effect. It's used for its destruction effect. But I'll get into that. So at the start of the damage step, if your UA monster battles an opponent's monster, you can banish that opponent's monster until your opponent's second end phase. You can only use this effective UA Penalty Box once per turn. Then also, you can banish this card from your graveyard, add one UA spell card from your deck to your hand. So, the actual effect of this card is really, really good. Banishing a target until the end of the second end phase is really powerful. Like, say if they've got like something that's beaten over your whole field and you're struggling to get rid of it, this card comes out. It's really good. And then the actual effect that we'll see the most usage is the usage that I'd play it with the Foolish Burial package, and you'll send it to the graveyard so that you can get one of the field spells onto your hand. So that's its main usage, but this does come up often, and also if the problem is it can brick your hand. But the way around it now is to set it onto the field and get Player Manager out onto the field so that you can pop it from your back row, and then you can get a spell search. But the reason this card, I think, is going to have to go into tier 1 is because its usage. It's a good battle step card, really good, really effective. But it's the fact that it can search any UA spell card from the deck. So if you need a turnover tactic, stadium sign-in deal, jersey, or hyper stadium, this card will search it for you if you can get it to the graveyard. And you're going to play Foolish Burial of Goods as a package, so this card's going to have to go tier 1. Only on the fact that it has so much synergy with the deck, and it's the main deck searcher. So then we've got Perfect Ace. Perfect Ace is also, with like Blockbacker, going to be the card that you will get out the most, because it has the Omni Negate. So it's once per turn this way. Once per turn during your opponent's turn, when a card or effect is activated, you can discard one card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it, which is really good because it has the negation, but it also destroys. You see a lot of cards have the Omni Negate, and it's just negate the effect. This card does it and destroys the card, so it's not like it's still on the field. So if they say normal summon Alistair, of course, what else will we do? Negate the effect for the search, and it will destroy it. But obviously the Alistair effect in the graveyard. But that's just an example. It will get rid of the card on the field. So this card's going to go tier 1. It's one of the best cards in the deck. Now we actually do move over to the best card in the deck, in my opinion, and it's a Player Manager. This is obviously one of the new cards in Phantom Rage. I'm just thinking now, should I move? I think I've got too many cards in tier 1. I think penalty box, stadium's gonna. Ace goes down to tier 2, just because you don't always have a target for it in hand to discard. Yeah, Ace is going to go down to tier 2 because of discard, the activation cost. But Manager has to be tier 1. If you normal summon, special summon a UA monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can activate one of these effects. Target one card on the field and destroy it. Negate the effect for all face-up monsters on the field until the end of this turn. Except UA monsters, you can only use each effect of UA Player Manager once per turn. This card's so good. It has a built-in Dark Rule No More, and it has a built-in pop. This card is so good. It's like the card for the deck. It could be normal summon or special summon. This card comes out, and it's an extra body on the board. It's level 8 as well. It's got great stats: 2,000 attack, 2,600 defense. You can go up to 2,500 with Stadium, and if you keep doing it, it's going to keep getting higher. So it's just so good. Being able to pop the field or being able to negate the field is crazy. And if you do it on your opponent's turn with Rebounder, it's even better because you can negate all the effects, and you can still negate with Perfect Ace if they have a counter to that, which is so good. So this card has to be tier 1. It's the best card in the deck. We'll move on to Playmaker now, and this is a card that I actually think I've played the least in UA, because I think it's absolutely dreadful. I understand the concept of it because they're trying to. Some of the cards are mainly damage step cards like Slugger, penalty box, but this is not one of the good ones. So when another UA monster you control declares an attack, you can have this card lose exactly 800 attack, and if you do, your attacking monster gains 800 attack. So it's just an attack gain. This obviously it's the most powerful UA monster with 2,600 attack, but I just don't understand the usage of this card. Like I talk about these situations with Man of the Match and Locker Room and Slugger, but this card has even less than that because it's just getting you to attack over a big body. But with Stadium giving you 500 plus attack points every turn anyway, if you switch out, the card doesn't seem useful, and itself loses 800 attack. Obviously, it's going to be up to 3,100 when it comes out if Stadium's out on the field. But yeah, this is tier 5. It's a dreadful card. Not the best card at all. So we go with Power Jersey. This is the OTK enabler with Dreadnought. So it's equip only to a UA monster. It gains 1000 attack and defense. Also, if it battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage it inflicts to your opponents, it's doubled. If your equipped monster destroys a monster by its attack, it can make a second attack during this battle phase. During your standby phase, banish the equipped monster. If this card is sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster returned to hand, you can return this card to the hand. If this card was in any other archetype that was meta, it would be banned. This card is so powerful. Actually, if there was an equip spell ranked list, this card would be number 1. This effect is crazy. So it's double damage, and you get to attack a second time, and then you can swap your monster out, and then if you do swap it out, it comes back to hand, so you can then just activate it again next turn. So removing the effect to banish itself. This card's crazy. Like, this card is actually mental. Reading this card for the first time with this deck, I was thinking, how is this card not banned? It's just absolutely mental. We talk about OTK decks that want to go straight with, so like access code talkers, OTK. This card makes Dunker an access code talker. This card, it gains 1000 attack, goes up to 3500. If it attacks, it's doubled, and it gets to attack again. Like, that's the damage that this card emits. It's crazy. This card has to be tier 1 because it's so good. And then we move on to Rebounder. This is a card that I really like, but I don't always see it in a lot of UA decks. So this card is special summoned during your opponent's turn, or normal summoned. You can special summon 1 UA monster from your hand or graveyard, except Rebounder, and you can only use the effect of Rebounder once per turn. So obviously, it's niche, and you have to use it with another card. So you use it with Midfielder or Libero or Turnover. So it's going to go into tier 2. But the payoff for this card is crazy good. If you get this card out onto field by swapping out Libero for it and shuffling something into your deck, you can get Rebounder onto field, and if you've got Manager in hand, Manager comes onto field and Libero comes onto field, you get the pop effect from Manager. It's just swapping out. This card allows for presence on the board when you don't always have it. But I understand the idea that it's awkward because you either have to normal summon on your turn to get the effect, or special summon on your opponent's turn, and it itself doesn't have an effect if it special summons itself on your opponent's turn. You have to use it with Midfielder or Spiker. So I am going to put it into tier 3. It is a staple in my UA decks, but I understand why it isn't in everyone's decks because it's not great. Now we're going to go on to the sign-in deal. This is a crazy card. I've got the OTS versions of this card for my deck. Well, this card reads: special summon 1 UA monster from your deck, but its effects are negated. Also, it cannot be used as Synchro or Exceed material for a summon. Then you lose life points equal to that monster's level times 300. You can only activate one UA sign-in deal per turn. So it's a special summon from the deck, and as we spoke about earlier, one of the most powerful mechanics is to summon from the deck, because it's the hardest place to get it from. Its effects are negated, but that really doesn't matter in UA because you can substitute it out from your hand. And you do lose life points, but life points don't matter. They don't matter at all. If we were making this tier list in August, this card probably would be tier 1 because of Iris, the Bewitching Iris, the Swordmaster card that comes out in Dawn of Majesty, because it has great synergy with this card, and it becomes a staple 3 for the deck. But right now, I think the card's tier 2. Obviously, you special summon from the deck. But would I put it in tier 1 as one of the best cards? it's almost there. It's like in between. Would I say it was more useful for penalty box? Yes, but is penalty box not the search? If penalty box didn't have that secondary effect, penalty box would be like tier 3, but that secondary effect makes the deck so much more consistent, because it can search sign and deal, for example, and you're always going to want to get it to the graveyard anyway. So now we'll move on to UA Stadium, which is the original field spell for the deck. This is obviously, it's like the new Hyper Stadium, but this is the original. It's probably going to be a tier 2. You know what? I actually think Hyper Stadium is going to be tier 1, tier 2, and then UA Stadium is going to be tier 1. Only because I'll read you effect. It might lead a little bit of discussion. But if a UA monster is normal summoned to your side of the field, you can add 1 UA monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, if a UA monster is special summoned to your side of the field, all monsters you currently control gain 500 attack. So you get a surge when you normal summon for another UA monster. Whereas if you activate UA Hyper Stadium, you can get a search normally. The problem is these two cards enable each other. One of them is going to be tier 1 and one of them is going to be tier 2. I think it's going to be like that. Hyper getting you the search on summon, search on activation, and then getting you the extra normal summon if you can reveal UA Stadium is really good. But UA Stadium's just the OG. But yeah, I think it's going to have to be Hyper and tier 1. And now we move on to the final card. This is a card that no one seems to play in UA decks, but because I think the card text makes it sound worse than it is. But I'll read it to you now. If you control 2 or more UA monsters with different names, shuffle as many monsters on the field as possible into the deck. Then special summon UA monsters from the deck that have different names from each other up to the number of cards shuffled into your main deck. If those monsters cannot attack this turn, then your opponent can special summon monsters from their deck up to the number of cards shuffled into their main deck. You can only activate 1 UA turnover tactics per turn. This card, when you read it, sounds really complicated. But this card, if there was a tier 0 playing every single deck with UA, this would be there. This card is the best card. Because having 2 UA monsters out onto the field is not hard. We've got Sign and Deal, we've got Stadium Searchers, we've got Manager, they all come out onto the field. And then if we can set this and activate on our opponent's turn, if they go into some crazy Exceed plays, Link plays, Fusion plays, like that, and we activate this, they have no monsters on the field because it specifically reads main deck, which is crazy because they can't then summon something from their extra deck because this card reads main deck, and because this deck is a main deck you can get so many cards out and you can get a reactivation of effects. So if you activate it and say you've got Blockbacker and Ace out on the field on your opponent's turn, and they activate summon like they get out like Thunder Dragon, Colossus. You can then activate turnover tactics, shuffle 2 back, get Manager out onto the field, and if you've got any back row, pop it, and get something like Libero out, and then you can activate Libero's effect. This card is crazy, it's cracked. This card is the best card. Obviously, having 2 UA monsters out, it doesn't always pop up, but it should. This card it's got to be a staple 2 of, maybe even a 3 of. It's awkward on the first turn if you haven't got exactly what you need for the pieces. But this card is crazy. This card is for me the best card because it's just disruption, and it's a way for UA to deal with boss monsters. Say we've got Dragoon, we don't have a way to get rid of it straight away. This card's a way to get rid of it. if you can avoid the Dragoon negation, so if you activate sign and deal, then go into this card. This card just gets rid of it straight away because it just shuffles it back. It doesn't target, doesn't do anything like that. It's one of the best, not even destruction, but it's the best board wipes in the game. If they've got a like Dragon Link with this card, it's just mental, because all their plays come from the extra deck. If you get 2 UA monsters out and activate this, their board gets wiped. It's literally a board wipe, and then you get 2 cards on your field, and it can activate effects, so you can get more than, so you get Rebounder onto field, you can get something else out onto field from Rebounder's effect. This card, tier 1 for sure, is actually, I'm actually going to rearrange this. So tier 1, that's the best card in tier 1. Then we go into manager, then spiker, then stadium, then power jersey, then dunker, then penalty box. Then tier 2, we're going to go midfielder, ace, blockbacker. Actually, we're going to go sign and deal. We would go sign and deal, then blockbacker. Yeah, sign and deal, then blockbacker, then stadium. Then tier 3, rebounder has to be at front of tier 3, because it's almost on the cusp of having tier 2 potential. I think it does have tier 2 potential, even tier 1. If we've got any new support, I think that's very unlikely. But the deck works well with this card right now. Then tier 4, these cards. It's good. Yeah, Goalkeeper probably has to be there just because it at least has some synergy and protection for the deck. But I wouldn't say it was great. Locker room definitely stays there, and then these 3 cards we don't need to talk about ever. These cards can stay in tier 5, and I honestly don't think they'll ever have potential. The only thing that I actually sort of wary of is that it's level 8, it's Playmaker, and manager's level 8, and so you can go into like Dingersu or Hope Harbinger. But with Dawn of Majesty coming out in August, I'll probably do this again, and I'm going to include the new card from the set that comes out, because that actually just solves the issue of having rank 8 plays. Obviously, I'm talking about Swordmaster of the Bewitching Iris. Because of Swordmaster of Bewitching Iris, I made a video of it last time. Makes this deck so much better. This deck becomes crazy with Swordmaster. But yeah, a little bit of a different video. Tier Maker. Great. Yeah, so every card will have popped up on the screen so you can read the effects yourself. Let me know if you make any changes. I think I've been a bit lenient on the tier 1. And I think penalty box could maybe, some people would probably even put it in tier 3. So it's probably like a tier 2, but for me, I just love the card. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what your tiers are. Yeah, that's been the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you're not. Thank you very much for watching. See you later.